Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you. That's such a Unity message, isn't it? Remember the good. It's a spiritual law that which we give attention to expands in our experience. And I have had in my past, and I'm sure I'll never do it again, but sometimes I have had the experience of focusing on the negative. As a matter of fact, I have been called a ruminator. Do you know what that is? Where you get a negative thought or a belief, and not only do you think it, but you chew on it. You just try and digest it. Just the mind just won't let it go. This is confessional time. I didn't even know we did confession in Unity, but here I am. But I've learned that I don't have to let that thought go uninterrupted, that I can actually direct my consciousness back to the good. Thanksgiving is a beautiful opportunity for us to do that very thing. With every trouble that we see in the world, in our own families, in our own bodies, the things many of you are going through major health crisis right now, if we can just take the opportunity to choose to remember the good. And this isn't even what I'm talking about today. I just felt inspired. That's a bonus sermonette right there. You got it. If you want to put extra in the offering, you can, but it's not required. I found these last week, and I loved them so much, I found some more. These are actual conversations with children. This one's called the weighing machine. My little sister says, hey. She says, hey. I said, yes, what is it? She says, I'm 47.8. I say, very nice. My sister, what about how much do you cost? The weighing machine, you got it, okay. Mom to her 4-year-old, buddy, you have your shoes on the wrong feet. But Mom, these are the only feet I have. And I love this one. I've seen this one several places. My 8-year-old in the car today. Do you want me to throw the confetti I have in my pocket? Me, no, not in the car. Why do you have confetti in your pocket? It's my emergency confetti. I carry it anywhere in case there's good news. Isn't that great? I'm thinking about doing that. Just get a little package of confetti to carry around. So the title of today's sermon is Giving and Receiving, Moving in the Flow of Spirit. Many of us have heard the old saying that it's better to give than to receive. Have you heard that? And from a certain perspective, we can say that there's truth in that, because if we're only looking to receive, we might become a taker. And Eric Butterworth's going to talk about that in just a minute. But actually, from a metaphysical perspective, giving and receiving are two sides of the same coin. That one isn't better, they're not in competition. That what giving or receiving are just aspects of this universal flow of divine creative energy, of God's abundance and healing power. And that if we're open, if we're a part of this flow of God's energy, then we receive and give easily because we're in it, we're part of it. If you don't mind, just take a hand. Either one, whichever one you're in, and just hold it out. Now imagine that around you in the air, there's this beautiful flow of invisible divine energy. And see what happens if we can just open our hand to receive it and to hold. And there's a tendency with humanity sometimes to go, oh, got it. But look what has happened. Go ahead and make a fist. Then what happens? No more can come in or go out. But this open-handed way of living in God's abundance and prosperity, this is how we do it. I want you to remember that. The same open hand with which we receive is the same open hand with which we give. And the same open hand with which we give is the same open hand with which we receive. It's an alignment with the energetic flow of good. Ernest Holmes defined love as the self-givingness of spirit into creation. That what this means is that givingness, this flow of good, is written into the very fabric of reality. That in the Hebrew scriptures, when the very beginning of Genesis said, and God said, "Let there be light," this is a loving and giving act. The creation began as an act of giving love. From the nothingness of pure consciousness into the form that we can name and experience. And that when we line up with it, when we plug into this current of divine creative energy that is still always creating and giving and loving, then we can move into a life of greater ease, freedom, abundance, if we are open, giving and receiving in that generous way. Last week we talked about gratitude as being one of the methods, the tools, the I guess practices really we can use to get in alignment with the good of God. And today I'm going to be talking about giving. And some of you are like, wait, is he going to ask for money again? Yes and no. I'm going to teach you today, but from my experience and from the great masters, that our giving, and not just our money, although that's part of it, the way we deal with our time, our attention, our talents, the way that we show up in our giving in the world. Are we doing it with a clenched kind of energy, kind of a selfish hoarding, or are we going to do it with this open-handed, open-hearted way of being? This evening begins the first night of Hanukkah, so happy Hanukkah to all of our Jewish brothers and sisters who are here or who are listening. If you don't know the story, it's a minor holiday in Judaism, but because it falls in the winter, and it's a beautiful way of bringing children. It was actually some American rabbis that kind of elevated Hanukkah because they wanted to create songs and the tradition of giving sweets and things like that to get the kids back into the synagogue. It's a great idea. It works for us too. But it happened about 2 centuries before the time of Christ. In Jerusalem at that time, it was a Greek empire, not the Romans yet, that had oppressed the people. And they had taken over the temple, and they had defiled the temple. They had set up an altar to Zeus, and they had sacrificed pigs in the temple in Jerusalem. And if you know anything about Jewish law, this is a deep desecration, deeply unclean. But there were a tribe of freedom fighters, the Maccabees, and they wanted to bring back the right and proper worship in the temple. And against great odds and great numbers, they fought and they overcame and they took back the temple. And as they were preparing to rededicate the temple, they destroyed the temple to Zeus and they constructed a new temple to God. And there was a sacred object, a menorah, a lamp. And as they looked, they only found enough oil for one day to keep it lit. But this was a light that was not supposed to go out. But there was not time to go find and procure and bless the sacred oil to keep the light lit. And a miracle happened. The oil for that one day of light lasted through the night, through the next day, and through the night, and through the next day. 8 days and nights, this light burned. Pretty good miracle. And it illustrates for us today, whether we're of the Jewish tradition or not, that there is a generosity in God. That there is a sustenance, that what we need will be provided if we're open. So I love the story. There's a great song that we sometimes sing here from Hanukkah called Light One Candle. It's by, I don't remember, it was Peter, from Peter, Paul, and Mary. He's the guy that wrote it. And it's the idea is that the light that was celebrated for the Maccabees many, many centuries ago is the same light that we are called upon to shine now in the times of our own darkness. And for me, this feels like grace. You know, we get so transactional. It's like you save, you earn and you save, and then you got your money. You know, that's kind of the way we think about it. Like we've done the right things, we've crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's, and then here it is, I'm taking care of everything. And we all know that sometimes we can take care of everything and it still doesn't work out the way we hoped. That illness and loss still occur. And yet there is this constant, generative, graceful, generous love from God that will get us through. You know, it was used so much back in the 70s and 80s that it became a joke. You know, the footprints in the sand thing. You remember this story? I'm not going to read it, but the idea that this person was reviewing their life and they could see that there was a time that they walked with God and there were two sets of footprints. But during the hardest times of life, there was only one set of footprints. And they said, God, how could you let me down at the times I needed you most? God said, my child, those were the times I carried you. This is the grace that we're talking about. There's also another telling of that story where it's butt prints in the sand, but I'm not going to go into that, where you were dragged through those times where you were resistant. Anybody else have those periods? Okay, not for that. Let's listen to what Eric Butterworth says about this law of giving and receiving. He's talking about the takers. The takers are the people who believe that their lives will always be the total of what they can get from the world. They are always thinking, get, get, get. They plan and scheme ways to get what they want in money, in love, in happiness, and in all kinds of good. No matter that they may be applying metaphysical techniques, they still may very well be takers. But whatever may be their spiritual ideals or lack of any, no matter what they take, they can never know peace or security or fulfillment. The givers, on the other hand, they are convinced that life is a giving process. Thus, their subtle motivation in all their ways is to give themselves away in love, in service, and in all the many helpful ways they can invest themselves. They are always secure, for they intuitively know that good flows from within. God is the divine givingness of the universe, and you are created in the image likeness of divine givingness. You cannot make any sense out of life or realize the free flow of substance in your experience until you begin to see yourself as a giver. This metamorphosis in my own consciousness from lack and scarcity, and I needed to take what I could get so that I make sure that I had mine, that closed-fisted way of being in divine creative energy, that to this place where I've been inhabiting for many years now of trust and openness. It was a really hard journey. So if you're new to this teaching and you think that I'm trying to trick you into something, I'm really not. I'm just trying to share with you what we do in the 12 steps is I'm going to share my experience, strength, and hope. That what Eric Butterworth described in his book, Spiritual Economics, is exactly right. That the more we take, the more convinced we are that there's not enough and I got to get mine, and that's the kind of world we live in. But the more we become generous and giving, the more we open ourselves to that flow, and then it's a chicken and an egg thing, really. Well, do we give because we trust, or do we trust because we give? Yes. It works both ways. That you may not feel like you've got the trust enough to give, but if you put the body in motion anyway, you begin to take those steps and act like a generous person, even if you're not one. See what happens. Try it. See what happens. You know, we are fundamentally whole. We are a wholeness, body, spirit, mind, heart. All of it is one thing, one expressions, different aspects of the one, and it doesn't really matter where in the circle of wholeness you begin to act and make different choices. It will begin to permeate, and that energy of generosity and givingness will open in you, and you become the thing you were only acting like you were. And I will tell you, the first time I wrote a tithe check with a comma in it, I nearly died. But it felt good. It felt good. Now, any time that I have the opportunity to be generous, I tell you, I get excited about it. Like, oh man, this is mine to do. I can feel it. Something wants to come through me. I get to be that generous spirit that is God. I get to be that now. It feels great. And those who are givers, they will attest to this, that there is great joy in it. And here's the thing. When I have those moments of generosity, it's usually because I have received some generosity and I get to tithe some more. I mean, it's like I'm in the flow of it. I'm in the flow. I've been doing a contemplative, not really a study, I've been sort of meditating on the Psalms. And you know, what we sometimes do in Unity is we pick out the good bits. And I'm just, reading one a day and being with it. And I forget there's a lot of smiting in those Psalms. You know about the smiting? Where if you're not doing it right, God's going to smite you. You know, if you're righteous, you're walking in the law of the Lord, good stuff is going to happen. But if you're wicked, I would look out if I were you. There's a lot of that stuff in there. And because we teach unity, non-duality really is the philosophical understanding. It's been kind of challenging for me to read some of the language, but I'm beginning to crack the code a little bit for myself. This is just for Michael. That what it's telling me is that it's not about the other lands and kings and armies that are overthrowing me. It's my own consciousness of scarcity and negativity and separation, blame, othering. That's what all that is. But if I can place my focus on the good, like Lainey sang about, if I can remember to choose to be generous and giving, that's when I walk in the love and the light of God. So it's really all about me, all about you and your own path. This is from Psalm 37, verse 3 through 5. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and enjoy safe pasture. Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he will do this. That's the code. If we can open our heart, our mind to the good of God, then we are safe in the land of incarnation, and the desires of our heart are given to us. So this is my teaching today. I don't try to do a lot of professorial, it's a didactic kind of teaching. I really do try and share my experience, strength, and hope, but I'm going to wag my finger just a little bit. Don't be a taker. But don't be a martyr either. Give from joy, give from love, and give what you have. You may not be ready to make the commitment of tithing on your financial good yet, but I'm telling you, that's where all the good is. If you're struggling in your finances, it's an amazing practice to commit that from all that I give, I'm going to give 10% just to show my trust, to show myself that I'm in trust of this law of giving and receiving. But give of your time. We have people every week, Alan and those other Unity and Community leadership who are Nancy, out here every week giving a few hours of their time to put food into the hands of hungry families. You can do that. It doesn't cost you a dime. You may have gifts and talents that we have need of in this community. There are things that you can do, that you can give. We call it volunteering, but we've upgraded. Now we call it sacred service, because that's what we hold it as. It's a practice, a spiritual practice. Find the way that you can give. The last point I want to make today is that I just love the word generosity. Isn't that a great word? It's a great way of being. And that when we are generous, when we make the decision to be generous, when we take actions that are generous, we are participating in God's abundance. In the same book, Spiritual Economics, Butterworth says this: the purpose of life is not acquisition, not getting, but unfoldment and personal development. Your life is God's gift to you. What you do with it is your gift to God. I went to St. Google for sermon illustrations, as I often do. Stories of generosity was my search. Millions of hits. And there are great stories of famous people who did huge, tremendous, Nobel Prize-winning acts of generosity. But you know what? I kept finding it's the stories of the everyday generosity that moved my heart. Detroit resident James Robertson, he found himself in the spotlight after people learned of his daily commute. The 56-year-old walked 21 miles and took 2 buses to get to his factory job, where he earned $10.55 an hour. This hellish commute left Robertson with just 2 hours to sleep each night. The Detroit Free Press reported, and then a 19-year-old college student started a crowdfunding project on GoFundMe to buy him a car. Donors ended up being generous and giving $350,000. A Ford dealership also gave him a new Taurus. And Robertson said he wanted the Taurus because it's like me, simple on the outside, strong on the inside. And he also received free financial coaching on how to manage his new wealth. Isn't that beautiful? Beth Hughes is a stay-at-home mother in Oklahoma. Anybody watch that OSU-OU game last night? That was really good. You can take the boy out of Oklahoma. I don't know what else to tell you. I never have ever rooted against the OU Sooners until last night. OSU deserved one, and they won. We're so happy about that. But I digress. Beth Hughes, a stay-at-home mother in Oklahoma, was about to pay the grocery store cashier for food for her family's Thanksgiving dinner last November when a customer tapped her on the shoulder and said, "Ma'am, I'm going to pay for your groceries." The woman stepped in and swiped her credit card, paying the $214 bill, and then left. Hughes said she was so shocked, she can't even remember if she said thank you, but she shared the story on Facebook, and she said that her friends were encouraged, and they started to do the same thing. Hazel Hammersley was staying at Children's Hospital LA in 2013 to get treatment for a fast-growing tumor in her abdomen. To lighten the mood, the 2-year-old's mother spelled out "send pizza" in masking tape on the hospital room window. A photo of the sign went onto Reddit, and users there sent more than 20 pizzas to Hammersley's room. The hospital eventually had to request that pizza deliveries stop. And the best news was that Hazel came home last May. Doctors said her scans were clear and she showed no evidence of cancer. And this one. One of the red kettles that the Salvation Army in Boston displayed over the holidays got a surprise last December. A widow deposited an engagement ring, which she said was valued at about $1,800. But the band also, she put it with a note into the kettle. And the anonymous woman said she wanted to donate the ring in her husband's memory. She said, "I'm hoping there's someone out there who made lots of money last year and will buy the ring for 10 times its worth." The note read. The donation inspired a Massachusetts widower to donate $21,000 to Salvation Army in hopes that the ring set could be returned to the original owner, but she did not come forward. How does it feel to hear those stories? My eyes get teary. I'm reminded that people can be good. I forget, people can be generous and kind to perfect strangers. I can be kind and generous. I get a sense of hope and possibility. That's the invitation. As we complete this year, second year in a global pandemic, so much disruption and uncertainty in the world, remember the good. the good that you are. Remember that you have something to give. One of my heroes died on Friday, Stephen Sondheim. Do you know Stephen Sondheim? You know his music. In his 20s, early 20s, he was asked to write the lyrics for West Side Story with Leonard Bernstein. And the new movie is coming out. Spielberg's directing it. He went on to write so many award-winning Broadway musicals. He was a composer, too. He almost said no to writing the lyrics for West Side Story, and somebody said, "Are you kidding? You're a kid. This is your chance." And he did. Oscar Hammerstein was actually the one who said, "You need to take this." And he wrote his first show, not a big success. And then he got an invitation to write the lyrics for another show with another well-known big composer, Julie Stein. The show was Funny Girl for an unknown little actress named Barbra Streisand. And Sondheim again said, "No, I want to write the music too." And Oscar said, "Do this. And then you'll be able to write all of your own shows you want to." And he was right. Oh my gosh, the Sondheim musicals. I've sung them, I've recorded them. The songs are just such a psychological depth and complexity in his understanding the human condition. He had a lot of therapy because he had a childhood. Amazing. Kind of a bristly guy at times. I met him, actually, once. In 1994, he received the Meadows Award at SMU in Dallas, and I got passes to all of the events. I got to ask him questions and shake his hand a few times. It was an amazing experience. He was very generous with his time and his wisdom. Here I was like 28 years old trying to impress him with what I knew. I wish, if I could, I don't have a lot of regrets, but if I could go back and just be a little bit more authentic and honest in the questions that I got to ask Stephen Sondheim, I would make that change instead of trying to impress him with what I knew. And you know, when I hear people ask questions like that, I just see it, I spot it instantly because I have it. He died Friday, 91, good, full life. I have a friend in Reno that when the family dog died, her 8-year-old Monty was trying to comfort Mom and said, "But Mommy, she got to be all the way old." And it's a gift many of us don't get in this life. But he gave an interview a week ago today and said his health was pretty good. He had twisted his ankle, but otherwise pretty good. And then Friday, he passed away at 91. People have been weeping in piano bars all over the world. Yesterday I had a little reset day. It's a practice I do every so often where I just put nothing on the calendar and I just watched musical after musical and cried. The songs are so amazing. Lin-Manuel Miranda wrote Hamilton. He talked about how generous Stephen Sondheim was with up-and-coming lyricists and composers. This is what he wrote. Lin-Manuel Miranda put this on social media. To future historians, Stephen Sondheim was real. Yes, he wrote Tony and Maria and Sweeney Todd and Bobby and George and Dot and Fosca and countless more. Some may theorize that Shakespeare's works were by committee, but Steve Sondheim was real. And he was here and he laughed so loud at shows, and we loved him. Last week, when I wrote him to say that his ears must be burning from the countless Sondheim kindnesses being shared from the generations of writers that he mentored, he wrote this in reply. Thanks for the nice boost to my spirits, Lynn. It's an aspect of my life I'm proud of. I feel as if I've repaid, partially at least, what I owe Oscar. Sondheim had an unhappy childhood. His parents hated each other. His father was absent. His mother was a real piece of work from everything that he's written. And the mom and son had moved to Bucks County, Pennsylvania, kind of the suburbs there, and their next door neighbor was Oscar Hammerstein. If you don't know Rodgers and Hammerstein, he also an incredible lyricist. And Sondheim befriended him, and Oscar stepped in as a surrogate dad. In those sessions at SMU, those years back in '94, Sondheim said, if Oscar Hammerstein had been a plumber, I would be a plumber. That was the reason that this successful Broadway lyricist saw a kid next door who needed help, needed time, needed love, and he gave generously. And so Sondheim, complicated, prickly, he gave from that same generosity with which he received. Lin-Manuel Miranda said, "Steve, you repaid your debt to Oscar 1,000 times over. We love you. I love you. Thank you." You can afford to be generous. People have been generous in their giving to you. In some way or another, you can afford to be generous. Give with love, without demand, and watch God move. How's your giving? Let's pray. I feel the generosity of spirit in this moment. My love for Stephen Sondheim. My heart opening at these stories of people, everyday people who gave so generously. And this is the feeling of the creative nature of God. It just wants to give, wants to love, wants to be revealed. And so what I know and what I proclaim in this moment is that all of us gathered here online or in person, we are opening our hearts and we're opening our hands and we are saying yes. That we receive the love generously and we give it forward generously. And that we are a part of the change, of the healing, of the evolution of humanity through our love, through our kindness, through our compassion, through our generosity. Show us, God. Show us where we can give and how. And we trust you to grace us with all that we need so that we can be generous men and women, sons and daughters of the Most High. Thank you, God. Amen. If no one has told you today that they love you, I love you. God bless you. Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.